And let me give a big round of applause to all the survivors of that 2022nd loop, because that was a tough one. Obviously, I didn't fare too well. This guy didn't fare too well either. However, who did extremely well throughout the entire year was Yoshifumi Gotsuka writing Undead Unluck. Although the series began back in 2020, Undead Unluck just had its biggest year to date. An anime announcement, some internet recognition, and to top it off, some insane storytelling.
This don't miss.
No, he's good.
That don't miss, man.
He's good.
In the heat of battle, he don't miss.
No.
In the heat of controversy, he don't miss.
No.
I think it's only fair we go back and look at everything which occurred with Undead Unluck this year. So if you want to hear about the anime, everything which occurred in the manga, and just some good Undead Unluck content, stick along. You already know the rules, I don't make them. You gotta like the video, subscribe if you're new here, and comment for me if you could. How did you feel about Undead Unluck in 2022? It was my favorite manga. I think it achieved a lot, and I think it's only going to achieve more in 2023, but those are some thoughts that I'm gonna share in the video. Jump Festa 2023 came with a lot of big surprises, but if you're on this video, I think the biggest surprise to you was the first look at Undead Unluck's anime. Although we already knew the studio, David Production, the madman behind Fire Force and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, was working on a 2023 scheduled release date for Undead Unluck. We had no idea we were going to get this first amazing glimpse at the anime back in December. And although I already got a video on this topic, the gist of my thoughts is that I was blown away. Undead Unluck's anime is looking as good as it could possibly look right now. We already knew it. Like, David Production, especially this Fire Force team, it was going to look good. It was going to be, at least in terms of its graphical representation, a fair adaptation of Undead Unluck. Everything that they do looks amazing. However, just the embellishment of what we actually got just made me really excited for what's to come. I think an adaptation should be more than what the manga is. It doesn't have to be better, I'm not saying that, but it should just be something different. Like, think about Chainsaw Man right now. Some people are upset that Mappa kind of gave it a different feel than what the manga has, but I kind of like two different experiences when it comes to a manga versus an anime. It can't be drastically different, but I do like having an adaptation. It doesn't have to be one-to-one. And Undead Unluck's anime, from this trailer even, you can already tell it's not just a one-to-one adaptation. They're going to embellish some stuff. That first scene with FUUKO is just really cool, I think. We do know that she's crying. We know that she's sad. We know that she's on the brink of it. However, just fully getting these crying, tears in my voice, like, representation, it hit home. In the regeneration scenes, that was crazy. Just fully bringing up something that was like 2 panels and making it into what Andy is, what Andy does. I don't even know, dude. I'm just in my head thinking about this, and I'm excited for what's to come. The music sounded good too, just that sort of crazy, nuts to the walls rock soundtrack craziness that you'd think with Undead Unluck, and the voice acting sounded amazing as well. Mokahara, we were a little bit scared for her just considering she was a newer voice actress, but she really killed it. I really love the way she's expressing who FUUKO is, and I think she's gonna do a good job. It's funny because Yuichi Nakamura, the more experienced of the duo, is the one who I've got more questions about right now. I do think that somebody with his experience and somebody as good as him is gonna come into the role. I don't think there's any way we're gonna be upset with the way Andy sounds throughout all of Undead Unluck, but this first trailer, this first sounding of him did sound a bit jarring to me at the end of the day. Not really worried about it though, like I said, because that dude's a killer. All of his roles are so freaking good. The voice actor I'm most excited to hear though, and the character honestly right now, Shin. And who's doing his? The actor for Shinpei-kun from Summertime Rendering, Natsuki Hane. Also is Tanjiro from Demon Slayer, a little known series. And it's funny because this dude is really accomplished, but more so than being accomplished, I think it's just a perfect, like literally perfect fit of a voice actor to the character. Shin is this joyful, playful, yet strong, big body brolic individual, and that's that same sort of voice that like Shinpei-kun that Tanjiro has and that Natsuki Hane is able to portray. And the last VA that we know right now is Kenji Nomura, and he's going to be Void for one episode. However, he's a good voice actor. I didn't really know who he was beforehand, had to look him up. However, you're definitely familiar with him. If you're not familiar with him, you're familiar with this, Goketsu, that big old brolic dude from One Punch Man. he was him. And Void should be a person who's got this like big, deep, rah, rah, rah voice, and that's the type of voice that this dude's able to portray. So it's a good casting, and that's how I feel about everything so far. It's as good as we can ask for, and I'm super excited for what's to come with Undead Unluck in 2023. Truly believe it could have this Fire Force effect where you take a good, well-known manga, but boost it into like that territory, the big boy territory. Fire Force is arguably always one of the biggest series out whenever it's on anime, and I'm really hoping that Undead Unluck in this crazy nuts to the walls series that it is gets that same sort of treatment. It's been one surprise after another for Undead Unluck this year though, and the biggest surprise to me was honestly us gaining internet recognition from the Western audience. So there's this large anime and manga content creator named Roger's Base, and he hosts a yearly community poll which polls the manga of the year. And after, self-said, much thought, deliberation, and opinions being shared, Undead Unluck was actually crowned the manga of the year. Now take that piece of information with like 5 billion grains of salt, because there are some upsets within this bracket that are more improbable than a frog turning backwards into a tadpole. However, I do believe this poll goes to show that through Yoshifumi Gotsuka's hard work, through this series' amazing storytelling, amazing characters, amazing everything, it's slowly and consistently grown its fan base to this size where it's truly a formidable force. Undead Unluck finally has gotten to this point where it's gaining the recognition it sort of deserves. I still believe, obviously, it deserves more than it's at, but we're at a point now where like we're getting the anime. The Japanese audience obviously likes Undead Unluck a lot. The Western audience is starting to kind of turn its heads towards the series as well, and that just goes to show that, dude, it's working. Undead Unluck, through its just legitimate hard work, through writing a good story, is garnering that attention, and that's what I want to talk about now. So if you aren't caught up on Undead Unluck, this is where spoilers are going to come in for all the content of the past year, but yeah, I gotta talk about it. Everything from chapter 93 onwards, so let's get into it. We came into the new year with the highest of spirits after defeating the 4 Kings of Seasons, but things took a turn for the worst once we got introduced to Unruin. Following Unruin's deed, which made the entire fanbase hate him overnight, the series took this drastic shift in tone, and we had this sort of serious mood sustain itself throughout most of the year with Undead Unluck, and I really loved that feeling. How things shifted from this sort of kind of serious. We're fighting off against the Kings of Seasons. Obviously, these are very dangerous quests, but like nothing really too scary. Straight into like hell. And a lot of people were saying like Undead Unluck should be a seinen, but I still don't think it needs to be, because the way Yoshifumi still kind of sets up this existential mental dread, especially once you get to Ragnarok and you hear about the numbers and how much tries and like what's been truly going on behind the scenes, Undead Unluck is a scary series without being a seinen. But with Unruin escaped, the new Uma ghost on the loose, FUUKO perished, and the world out of balance due to the loss of the seasons, we had a tough 3 months to prepare for Ragnarok. But it wasn't just the Union that had a tall hill to climb. A lot of different Negators had these big issues which they needed to resolve in 3 months' time. So in chapter 99, you see a lot of different Negators spring out on their own paths, and all of their action would have vast implications on the endgame for Ragnarok. And a quick note. The MVP of 2022 was definitely Jules. We saw immediately after FUUKO perished that she sprung into action, that she would not let her beacon of hope be extinguished, and she set forth a plan that only rivaled Lelouch in complexity and got it done. That is my captain for life, no matter who was number 1. But as mentioned, every single Negator had a path which they had to tread throughout this year in order to get to that end goal of Ragnarok, whether it had positive implications for the Earth or whether it had negative implications. Some people were on very selfish paths, some people were on righteous paths, and I think it was truly exemplary of what happens at the end times. Given FUUKO was out of commission most of the year, we primarily followed Andy on our journey, and I really loved this sort of desperado trying to find my why tale that we went on with Andy. Although we already knew that FUUKO was his love and his real why, this was kind of the confirmation of that, and just him realizing that like I need my woman, I need FUUKO, and I need her to get this task done. Whether she can help me in my end goal of actually like, ending myself, doesn't truly matter. We need to get this gigantic task done for Victor, for Jules, and we need to put all the burdens on our back, and just seeing him kind of realize that was a really cool journey. Unruin's castle is Andy's first stop on his quest to save FUUKO, and on our way there we get introduced to one of our favorite characters, Lil Lucy, a Negator who we come to know as Unhealthy. Encountering Uma Thirst, who Andy actually slays whenever he gets introduced to Lil Lucy, he fights off against like 6 different Umas right here on his way to get to Unruin's castle, and this was just a show of resolve that we had not seen out of Andy, and once again, him just establishing his why and his resilience in order to get FUUKO back. But Andy's actions were not taken lightly, and this was one of the most insane moments we saw throughout the entire year with Undead Unluck, and I think it's something we kind of skipped over and we should have looked at with a closer eye. This introduction of another regulator in the form of Seal. So for the first time ever, Luna reaches out directly to Jules in order to start a conversation. Think about that. 99 different loops, and every single time Jules was the one who prompted the conversation. Whether it had been initiating the arc, whether it had been having some sort of conversation about transferring points, doesn't really matter, but Jules had always started those conversations. This time Luna reaches out apparently on behalf of God in order to enact some sort of regulation due to undead incurring God's wrath. We learned a lot about Luna recently. We know that she is a god. We know that apparently her and Sun are playing this game against each other in order to see who freaking wins. But this was weird. There's 2 regulators on the earth, Seal and Unruin. How are they enacting regulations which are both against the Negators that are in the form of both an Uma and a Negator? Because you would think that Luna, presumably fighting on the side of the Negators, would have just only sent down 2 Umas or something? I don't really know, genuinely. But there's just this little hole that I'm thinking of, and leave a comment if you kind of are on the same thought as me, that it doesn't make sense that we are sent 2 separate regulations in the form of both an Uma and a Negator, but they're both against us. It's weird. I think there has to be some sort of third player, or Luna is just the only sole player and Sun's not even a thing, because I think Sun's an Uma. We'll talk about this. But backing away from that rabbit hole, which we could fall down forever, because we really do need to talk about Undead Unluck's endgame. Seal's fight was amazing. I really loved the introduction of this character. I'm not really sure if Seal's a he or a she, whether it really doesn't matter. We love everybody on this channel. However, Seal was just hard-boiled. The ability to seal away other people's powers inside of itself and use those powers against whoever the heck it's fighting was really hard. Like, you see all these Umas pull up, and then he just comes up, swipes them all out of the air, and says, "You guys aren't getting the job done. Let the king of the Umas get this done." Like, Seal was really tough. The only thing that kind of hindered my fear of Seal was the fact like we're deep in the story at this point, and like Andy is just a little bit too hard-boiled for you. And the fact that Andy got himself sealed away, I know it was kind of just to ensure that little Lucy could get saved and we could kind of, end up at Unruin's castle and shit. But like still, we got ourselves sealed away. I was like, this isn't going to be too big of a player at the end of things, but like his lore was truly interesting. The fact that apparently he's the person who's always been sent to take away undead makes sense. The only thing you can do to somebody who doesn't die is seal them away. So Andy and Lucy are sealed away. Seal's on his way to Unruin's castle, and we get a cool conversation. Upon laying eyes on Unruin, Seal says, "You're the one who was given powers of regulation just like me. The one who will be king of the Negators." And like I was saying, this truly confuses me. The fact that these 2 individuals were sent as regulations with the same goal, but they're of very differing races, the Uma and the Negator, 2 people who are presumably always at war with each other, but they were sent for the same exact goal. And it just doesn't make sense to me that Luna would work with Sun, the person she's competing against, in order to help him out. Like, hey dude, sorry, I know we're playing Super Smash and like I fell off the edge, so here's the homie stock. That. A homie stock.
Whoa, just take it easy, man.
Like, what? You're holding this L. Luna, you've lost 99 times apparently. Don't you want to win just once? It doesn't make sense to me, the fact that this regulation would come. It just truly doesn't, and it just makes me think that either Luna's on top and she's just, controlling everything, or there's got to be a third player in this game, and like Sun and Luna are just little players. But we're all well aware of what occurs in Unruin's castle. After the introduction of Ghost, a lot of big things were added to the world, and one of them was the ability to fully harness and manipulate your soul. And due to this ability being added, we were actually able to astral project now. Little Lucy figures out that if you think about what you truly want to be, manifest that version of yourself that you've always dreamed of, you're able to get your soul out of your body. She sees herself as this little Tinkerbell-like fairy, and Andy, you know what he sees? The person who's able to grow old with his allies, the people he loves, and it's a beautiful reminder of Andy, the undead, and what his goal has always been. But we get outside of the bodies. We figure out, though, that you're not able to fight in these sort of astral forms, so, shit was still screwed for a second. We're still fighting off against Unruin and Seal. But you know who had to come? The real main character of Undead Unluck. You know what Akira Kuno said, man? I got a really good-looking main character in here. You'd love him, Mom. Rip Wallace. Rip Tristan? You know what I meant. So our knight in shining armor appears, and now we got a 2-on-2. Andy and Rip versus Seal and Unruin, and a couple of things were brewing in the background as well. We saw that Ghost was up to no good, appearing in front of Nico with a woman who we didn't know, who we obviously came to understand was Ichiko Namuri, his deceased wife and the love of his life. And Joyce is making great headway as well. She's gathered a group of Umas in order to stagnate Ragnarok as long as possible, and she's trying to find the last two sacred spirit treasures, the Rebellion and the Heart. The former being a weapon and the latter being something we have yet to see still. But who cares about the background events? We got the most hard-boiled 2v2 fight of the year in front of our eyes. But before it could even get underway, we got the most harsh reminder that Undead Unluck is a series which seldomly sees happy days. As Unruin cackles, saying he couldn't have even imagined things going this well, Andy receives a call on his phone from Mui. Mui details that Nico Vorgel had turned his back against the Union. He had betrayed everybody in the entire vicinity, destroying all the Umas which were holding back Ragnarok, and even fighting against all the Negators and just beating their freaking ass. And this expedited the process. Ragnarok was fully upon us, and you know what Unruin and Seal's goals were. They were here to usher in God. So as soon as they heard this, they were like, deuces, we're heading over to the Union HQ to bring in our boy, which is something that we're going to talk about a little bit later. However, this was insane. Like I said, this was one of those reminders that Undead Unluck freaking sucks. This moment, whenever it actually happened, being a reader, a weekly reader, I was stunned. I was like, holy freaking heck. We didn't know what this woman was to Nico. And I think we all assumed, yeah, it's probably his wife. We knew that, there was some sort of thing in Nico's head which was just really hounding him. There's that panel where Nico's just waking up in his sleep. He's got pills next to him and he just can't deal with whatever's inside of his head. And we assumed that could have potentially been that. But we figured out right here, whatever that was, whatever that woman was inside of that cage, literally made Nico just start Ragnarok. And once again, the selfish actors, and just the end of the world. But speaking of selfish actors, we have another instance of this extremely self-interested behavior occur right in front of Andy. And it's funny because it's so irrational to act this way at the end of the world whenever you really need to be working together. But to be a human, you always act in self-interested manner. That's what they teach you in economics, because that's a rational thought, to act in a way which would better yourself more than anybody. And you see a lot of that occurred during this final loop. And it's crazy right here with what happens with Rip, because he really wants to save Layla. Obviously, we get this backstory, my favorite backstory within the series, this backstory of Layla and La Mira, along with Rip. But was it worth it, bro? I truly don't believe we can even save Layla. She has an incurable heart disease. I'm thinking of it literally as I'm talking, but the only thing I could think could potentially save Layla is little unhealthy Lucy. Lucy probably has some way, since it's unhealthy, I don't know how. If she could think of it in some different sense, maybe she could even just take the diseases of the world. I'm gonna take all the diseases from the world so the world has no more diseases. Shut up, Joey Badass. I'm just freaking rambling. I need to compose myself. All right, let's get back on track. Rip is trying to defeat Andy in order to take his points and use that to initiate the arc. Go forward to this next loop. This is where we started finding out some things that Jules has kind of been hiding from us. That the round table is actually the arc. This fact that the highest point holder is the only individual who gets to ride on the arc in order to go forward to that next loop. Rip trying to use the arc in order to go back in time or go forward in time in order to save Layla. And as I mentioned, I don't think it's going to happen. I think that's going to be one of those tragedies that FUUKO just kind of got a hold like an L, but it's dope. It's a true show that like everybody has a reason that they get through life, and it's really hard. Like, it's weird to say this. I hope you guys don't think I'm a therapist or somebody who's smart in any way, shape, or form. However, everybody needs a goal. Doesn't matter if it's just one woman, the person you love. Doesn't matter if it's one man, the person you love, or if it's something grandiose. You're like Friend in freaking 20th Century Boys. But you need something. You need a reason why you want to live. And whenever that reason got taken out of the world for Rip, it brought him to this point. It brought him to the point where he did everything in his power in order to try to get her back. He literally cut his limbs off. He got these freaking artifacts installed on him and stuff, and he did everything. He chased down this impossible task after getting this curse in order to save one person. Crazy shit. And the biggest sacrifice in the entire series. This one actually made me mad, and I hope FUUKO beats the crap out of Rip next loop whenever she finally meets him for sacrificing Latla. And to kind of piggyback on an earlier thought, this is the reason why I don't think Layla's gonna survive. I think Rip has to learn. That's the true character arc of Rip. To learn that you gotta love what's in front of your freaking eyes. Love the people who are there with you throughout the entire journey. I'm gonna eat with who was at the table with me to get there. And Latla was always with him. I know he loves Layla. He grew up loving her. He had a crush on her. But that was growing up. You're a child, bro. You're a child. He had this woman in front of him that he did everything with and lived with, loved with. Should have been with her. And Latla, her ability is unmirror. And if it's not, then dude, everybody can come beat my ass. I don't freaking know. But this was a good fight. Andy not even wanting to fight back against Rip kind of just has to accept the fact that I'm going to have to take on the burdens of all these individuals, because it's not just me I'm fighting for. It's not just FUUKO I'm fighting for. I'm fighting for everybody who has a why, and that's so real. Everybody has a why, like I was just explaining, and he wants to pick up all those and ensure that all those people are happy in the next loop. He defeats Rip with a Ditto Roto. And we're on our way to Nico Vorgel. Ghost, and my favorite, second favorite arc of the year, because Ragnarok? And quickly and off camera, I'm going to go over my thoughts on the character popularity poll, because I had some very harsh thoughts for you voters. Andy and FUUKO won, of course. Shin and Mui 2, of course. Joyce and Victor number 3 is some of the most arguable things I've ever seen, though. It's obviously Tatiana and Billy number 3, Rip and Latla number 4, and then we can put Joyce and Victor there. Especially considering at this point in the series, we didn't even really know what that real stuff between Joyce and Victor was. Come on, but I mean, shit. After the chapters after this, when we learned what happened with Joyce and Victor, I think the billions of years they spent together is kind of worthy of being up high in a character popularity poll. So Andy hops back on his motorcycle and we arrive at the Union HQ. Unruin and Seal are actually already here, but we have the toughest toddler in the entire universe, Tatiana Unforgettable, in order to kind of stave them off while Andy focuses on the bigger task at hand, fighting Nico Vorgel. Nico's filled the entire Union HQ with poisonous gas, so anybody within here who doesn't have a mask is dying. And the crazier part is Nico had taken away all of the mask beforehand in order to kind of ensure that it's clipped for everybody within the HQ. But there's one action he committed which showed that he was still within the right state of mind. He left one mask behind in order for Miko, his daughter, to survive. So we're a bit confused right here. We're wondering, why is he acting this way? And it's kind of all back to the original thing. What the heck did Ghost do? So Andy hurries along to find Nico before finally arriving at room 25. Within this room is the cryogenically frozen bodies of several different Negators, Void, Gina, and even at the moment, the deceased FUUKO. And although Andy tries to see eye to eye with Nico, this is just a conversation these two lads are not going to agree upon. So Andy leaps forward, you know him, hard-boiled dude, and tries to stab Nico. However, before we get into that fight, I want to make a little point to highlight Yoshifumi and I think some of his best writing in all of Undead Unluck. From the huge bags under his eyes to his sort of somber demeanor, we've always known Nico Vorgel to be a guy with like a rainy cloud over his head. He's just having a bad day every single day. But we finally got to figure out why. It's not just because he's an old man. It's not just because of that Negator ability he has. It's because he's been completely broken. He talks about how he only had 2 reasons to live: science and his wife, and it's not in that order either. His wife was the biggest priority in his entire life, as we obviously come to learn, because she is the individual who kind of showed him what life is truly about. He had only loved science his entire life, and that was the only thing that he knew could kind of bring him happiness. But Ichiko came. Ichiko, this woman who is just as smart as him, just as talented as him, and just as cool as him, and he could get along with her. Somebody who he wanted to go out of his way to finally work on something else for it, because science and art in general is an extremely selfish thing. People are interested in what they're interested in, and that's how Nico had always been. He's going to work on the inventions he wants to make. He's just going to do what he wants to do because I'm Nico Vorgel and I'm smart as hell. However, this was that first time whenever he helped out Ichiko with her eyes, and I know I'm like kind of like going way further than I need to, but nonetheless, this is important to talk about when we're understanding how Nico Vorgel is a broken individual. Ichiko had taught him so many things, from selflessness to caring to love to how to love yourself, and that's just a crazy thing to be taken out of your world. And I think in this conversation we see between Nico and Andy at the beginning, how Nico just goes straight to talking about philosophical, existential sort of topics. It just shows that like he's done everything in his mind that he could possibly do to try to help himself out. He had been on the brink his entire life. He was just like FUUKO at the beginning of the manga, except he just continued to push on. And it just finally hit the brink. He just finally couldn't go forward anymore. He'd thought through it all from a scientific perspective, from a supernatural perspective, everything he could do to kind of right the wrong which he had lived through, and he couldn't help it. But dude, that was some crazy writing from Yoshifumi, because like the backstory of Ichiko and everything, and I'm not going to cover it because I just talked through it a lot, but like that shit was just on fire. But the fight. This is one I was extremely excited for. We knew that Nico was a really hard-boiled individual, but we didn't know what he did to fight. We had seen him use the psychopods in that fight earlier with Victor, so we knew that he had this sort of incineration laser which he could use just on command. And we also knew that he was really strong, just considering the fact that Shin had previously stated he was on par with fighters such as Jules or Undead. So, you know, it's gotta be a pretty strong lad. But this first time, like us. What? As mentioned, things start off with Andy leaping down towards Nico, but Nico uses several psychopods in conjunction with one another to create this grid format. This grid burns through Andy, obviously, and I'm like, alright, this dude can scrap a little, but I had the same thought as Andy. If you're in a Jujutsu Kaisen fight, you're fighting a Shikigami user, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna get up close and throw hands. If you have to summon things, if you have to use like tools or whatever to fight me, you probably don't got combat ability, but nah. That wasn't Nico. He was like Suguro Geto. He was like Fushiguro. He will fight you at any distance. Nico hits Andy with Shin's technique, and this is wild because we saw Shin incapacitated earlier when Nico betrayed the Union. Nico hit Shin with his own move right then, and whenever he hits Andy with it, Andy's like, oh crap, this dude is a strong individual, and like I was really surprised. I knew that Nico was going to be strong, but to use Unforgettable as this sort of Sharingan eye, like this is damn near a Mangekyo at this point as well, because this dude is so freaking strong. Wait, Mangekyo? Nah, this dude's got a freaking Rinnegan, honestly. The fact that he also has these astral dolls which are just able to be spawned out of his psychopods, and these astral dolls are not just normal. These astral dolls have the abilities of the Negators which they were created by, and I really want to know the science behind these, because like this is crazy. This doesn't even make sense. Like, These astral dolls were a force to be reckoned with, and Andy is just getting punched, kicked, and slapped all over this entire room. And as soon as you think that things are bad, they got worse, because we figure out that Nico, in order to work with Ghost, you know, to potentially get his wife back, they fully were working together. They assimilate one into one, becoming one entity in this sort of ghost human individual. It made no sense to me. A spiritual, physical, mental miracle. I feel like Eminem, dog. It's crazy. But legitimately, let me compose myself. it was really interesting, this fact that we've never truly seen an Uma and a human combined to assimilate into one entity. You know, we see Undead and Clothy, they work together. You know, we see maybe Unruin with Blood and Shadow, they work together, but no, to fuse soul into soul, one entity into another was really wild. And I even love this joke with Ghost that in order to reach phase 2, it has to manifest itself physically, like a ghost and apparition has to attain a physical body, a physical host, in order for itself to reach its strongest phase. That was a good little joke. In this phase, Yoshifumi, you better bring it back next loop because I need more of phase 2 Ghost. This sort of Grim Reaper / Nico fit was insane and I really loved it, but this fight was short-lived, honestly. I think the fight beforehand, Nico against Undead without Ghost also being in there, was really dope, and I think the fight with Ghost assimilated is dope as well. You know, he powers up all of Nico's abilities and just makes it so like Nico's super hard. But Andy, in order to win this fight, does something that's sadly super smart, super real. A broken man can only be beaten by breaking him a little more. So in order to do that, Andy destroyed all of the last memories he had. The reason that Nico had been in room 25 was that this was the room that he and Ichiko had been working in. One of his last memories he could ever remember with her. Somewhere that kind of just evokes those feelings. But Andy diddle-rodos everything within the room, breaking Nico to this point where he finally kind of snaps back because, as I forgot to mention, you know, I'm shitty at making videos. Whenever Ghost and Nico assimilate, Ghost was fully taking over him, blackmailed him in order to kind of bring him to this situation, but lied to him in the sense that, hey, I am fully here and I wasn't doing this as a two-way street. This was only for me to move forward to my next location. So Ghost, you know, he had taken over Nico. But Andy, with the help of a silver waxing crescent moon, had to take... Oh my god. Had to take down that little dude. I gotta stop her. That scared me. But the defeat of Ghost brought us to a very, very, very interesting place. And honestly, one of the greatest moments of my year when it comes to reading anime, manga, indulging in media. The resurrection of Izumo Fuuko. Like, god dang, Yoshifumi. If you know how, like, you know that feel-good moment in the series, whenever you get to the end of an arc and you finally just see everything come to fruition. Whenever in Rurouni Kenshin, whenever Kenshin finally cuts down that man, that murderer, you're so dang hype. And that's how I felt right here. Izumo Fuuko finally getting revived, finally coming back to Andy, and just kind of, it felt good. It was a little bit of hope that we had been missing out in this entire year of Undead Unluck, and it kind of shifted the tone, funny enough, to even get darker right afterwards, because this is the road to Ragnarok. And as I begin to talk about that, I'm a YouTuber, you know? I'm a YouTuber, so I gotta YouTube shit sometimes.
What do you mean by that?
And this is where I'm gonna YouTube you all. My apologies. Ragnarok is a long arc. There's a lot of stuff I need to talk about, and like I think I could talk about that for 20 to 30 minutes on its own, and not even just that. Right beforehand, we have Jules. Jules just informing Andy and Fuuko, like, hey, here's what you're really about to do. Here's what I've done in my entire past. Here's how I got you to this point. Can you take the reins? We have Tatiana and Billy. We have Billy going, Unruin. Like, we got a lot to talk about. And this video is getting really long. So I'm gonna have to give you a part 2. But the part 2 will be out sooner than part 1 because, you know, part 1 came out like, I don't even know what year we're in. We might be in 2025 at this point. Like, I've been procrastinating nonetheless. I'm gonna be working. Hey, stay on my ass. If you need me to work harder, just say it. Be like, Darzus, freaking work, dog. And hey, I take that as motivation. Feel for the fire. But seriously, thank you for bearing with me, being patient with the kid. There's not many Undead Unluck YouTubers, so I try to, you know, do my part in, you know, trying to make good content for it. I don't even know if I make good content, but I make content. Shit, nobody else is making videos, so here I am. Nonetheless, I appreciate y'all for watching. Like I said, part 2 should be out sometime soon. I'm gonna start recording that as soon as possible. Probably today. Got a doctor's appointment though. Gotta get my hand good. But yo, hasta luego, mi amigos. Y'all do well. I appreciate you for watching. If you made it all the way here, comment orange. Hasta luego.